Hello, there's a lot of talk at the moment about mercenaries in Ukraine. And indeed, Aidan Aslin is accused of being a mercenary fighting for Ukraine and now on trial in the Donbass and actually fighting for his life. And yet the real mercenaries are on the other side. The real mercenaries are genuine neo-Nazis, Putin's shadow army. It's called Gruppa Wagnera, the Wagner Group. And it first appeared really in the 2014 Crimea annexation. And it was led initially by a man called Dmitry Valievich Utkin. And it was named the Wagner Group because Utkin was very keen on Richard Wagner and specifically on Adolf Hitler's passion for Wagner and therefore on the Third Reich itself. And The Economist, a perfectly reputable magazine, reported on Utkin's Nazi tattoos and the fact that Utkin favors a pagan religion. He follows the Rodnova, or the Slavic gods. They're very interesting. But the combination of the neo-Nazi slogans tattooed on his body and this pagan interest and the interest in the Third Reich strongly suggests to me that it is the Wagner Group, not the Azov Brigade, that is the group with Nazi sympathies. Now, how on earth can we end up with this transference? Well, fairly simply. The Wagner Group is a private military company, a network of mercenaries, often called the de facto army of Mr. Putin. It officially doesn't exist, and therefore it can do anything. These people have impunity. They've worked in Syria, in Libya, as well as in the Donbass. And they are financed by an oligarch who apparently is very close to Mr. Putin. Now, a lot of the details that can be found out about this group come from a book which is published in Russian. There's also a new version of this book translated into French. At the moment, there isn't an English version, and it's called I, Marat. And it's written by a man called Gabidulin, who saw service with the Wagner Group in Syria. And he writes about the various tasks that the Wagner Group is doing. And one of these is to spread disinformation. Another, of course, is to fight on the front line and to prop up regimes, dodgy regimes, to terrorize the local population, to spread lies, to sow disinformation. Now, the lies and the disinformation, well, they've done a great deal of that in the Donbass. And so, for example, if you look at their history, it was the Wagner troop in Mali that laid out dead bodies and then blamed the French. It was the Wagner troop that laid out those dead bodies. They were caught doing so on camera. And now it's the Wagner troop that have accused Ukraine of the same trick. So who are we going to believe? And Gabidulin wants people to know the truth about the lies put out in Russia's name by the Wagner Brigade. Now, today, coincidentally, a man called Vladimir Andonov, who was a member of the Wagner Brigade, was shot near Kharkiv. And Andonov is known by the moniker the Executioner. He's famous for his brutality. He was decorated by Putin for merit in battle. Of course, Utkin was also decorated by Putin. And Peskov claimed that he didn't really know who Utkin was, though he did concede that he was at a particular party and that he had been decorated as well. Andonov played a major role, apparently, in the deaths of civilians in the Donbass. And he was killed last night on the same day as two other Russian generals, Kutuzov and Bernikov. So those three deaths today, finally Russia is starting to admit the tally of deaths. And those three, I think, strongly suggest that if the war is not turning in Ukraine's favour, it is certainly, definitely not a victory march for Mr. Putin's troops. I think the Wagner Brigade is a particularly pernicious organisation. And I know people have said, I'm dealing with war here, I'm talking about war, and there's fault on all sides in a war. Absolutely. But I think in this particular case, once you start looking at the facts, the effort to transfer a crime from one group to another is so obvious. And the Wagner Group, it's specifically tasked with spreading disinformation, and it is doing that very successfully. There we are.